I'll say it again. They can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program.
Most people think this story is about whether the United States should have attacked Iran or not. It isn't, because the real question isn't just about the military. It's about economics and strategy. Because when the United States launched yet another attack against Iran February 28, 2026, under Operation Epic Fury, the debate immediately split down familiar political lines. Some Americans supported it, some opposed it. But once you step outside the partisan silo, a different question appears. Why now?
So I'll tell you what I think is important. Israel was determined to act in their own defense here, with or without American support. Why? Because Israel faced what they deemed to be an existential threat. Iran was building missiles at a radical and a rapid clip to the point where our allies in the region could not keep up. As you know, Iran has long vowed to take out Israel, wipe it off the map, and they have long seen that as a critical threat to their very existence.
According to President Donald Trump, one of the major justifications for the attack was that Iran was developing long-range missiles. That's a serious claim. Long-range missile capacity changes the strategic balance in an entire region.
They attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland.
But here's where the timeline becomes important, because the Defense Intelligence Agency released a missile threat assessment in May of 2025. According to that report, Iran could potentially develop a long-range missile or have long-range missile capacity by 2035. Not next year, not next month, but potentially a decade away if they chose to pursue it. So, if that's the timeline, and if the timeline hasn't dramatically changed, why was the strike so necessary now?
Because Israel faced what they deemed to be an existential threat.
The questions don't stop there, because many people remember another operation just from last year, Operation Midnight Hammer. After that operation, the administration said that Iran's nuclear program had been obliterated. That was the word used publicly, obliterated.
We obliterated the regime's nuclear program.
Wait a minute!
But if the nuclear program was already destroyed, and if long-range missile capacity wasn't projected until 2035, then what exactly forced the timeline for a new strike in 2026? That's the question worth examining.
Because Israel faced what they deemed to be an existential threat.
And this is when the economic side of the conversation starts to matter. Because when conflict enters the equation, markets react. Energy markets, supply chains, inflation expectations.
Wild ride for stocks yesterday, the Dow plunging more than 1,000 points before recouping some of its losses. Elizabeth Schulze is here in studio with us. And Elizabeth, we're seeing another big move in gas prices this morning.
Big move. Good morning, Michael. This is something that families will notice when they go to fill up. Gas Buddy says the national average price for a gallon of gas is up about 25 cents just in the past couple of days. We're now looking at the average price per gallon between $3.17, $3.19. And these are just some of the biggest price hikes on record that we're seeing right now. They do expect prices to keep going up in the next couple of days and weeks if the war does not de-escalate another 25 cents as much as that.
Even if the conflict stays limited, it introduces uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the fastest ways to rattle economic stabilities. Some analysts are already warning that escalation in Iran could cause increased volatility around oil prices, inflation, and global growth, which means the economic ripple effects don't just stay in the Middle East. They show up elsewhere, including here at home.
Economists that we've been talking to say that we could start to see higher food costs in the next days or weeks if companies pass down those transport costs. Another place we could see prices go up pretty quickly is airfares, both international and domestic flights.
There is also a military logistics question that rarely makes the headlines, and it has to do with weapon supply. The United States is reportedly facing a shortage in Tomahawk cruise missiles, a shortage driven largely by heavy use across recent conflicts, including operations involving Iran in 2026. Now, Tomahawk cruise missiles aren't just symbolic weapons. They are a critical part of U.S. long-range strike capacity, and they aren't cheap. They also take a long time to manufacture. So, if the United States is burning through these systems faster than they can be replenished, that raises a strategic question. What happens if a larger conflict emerges? Not with Iran, but with a more formidable adversary. Because deterrent doesn't just depend on willingness, it depends on capacity, and that capacity depends on supply. This is why foreign policy decisions can't be separated from economic and industrial realities. Military actions don't just cost money, they affect supply chains, they affect energy markets, and sometimes they expose weaknesses in production capacity that weren't obvious before. Which brings us back to the central question. If Iran's nuclear program was already obliterated last year, and if long-range missile capacity was projected to be years away, then why did this strike happen now? And what are the economic consequences if the conflict expands even slightly? Because the real cost of military action rarely shows up in the headlines first. It shows up later, in markets, in budgets, and sometimes in the weapons inventory supplies that we need for future conflicts. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we step outside the political silo and look at the incentives, the economics, and strategy behind the headlines, then stick with me here at the Independent Mail. Because the real story is rarely the one everyone's arguing about. Until next time, peace and stay informed.